Did Hollywood accidentally expose its own arrogance in 1998? This was the year studios threw massive budgets at remakes, sequels, prestige dramas, and supposed franchise starters, only to watch some of them crash in humiliating fashion. These were not small failures, they were expensive warnings. From bizarre creative gambles to blockbuster betrayals, each mistake revealed something the industry refused to admit until the damage was already done. Major League back to the minors.
Sure. Take good care of it, all right?
Sometimes a franchise does not die with a bang. It just walks onto the field and nobody cheers. By the time Major League Back to the Minors arrived in 1998, the original underdog magic had almost completely disappeared. The first Major League had worked because it felt scrappy, loud, rude, and full of misfit energy. It made baseball feel like a battlefield where losers could become legends. But this third chapter felt like Hollywood trying to squeeze one more inning out of a game that was already over. Most of the original electricity was gone, the stakes felt smaller, and the comedy no longer had that dangerous clubhouse bite. Instead of feeling like a triumphant comeback, it felt like a minor league imitation of its own franchise. The film became a reminder that sequels cannot survive on brand recognition alone. Audiences did not just reject it because it was smaller, they rejected it because it felt unnecessary. The real catastrophe was not that it failed, it was that it proved the series had run out of reasons to exist. The Odd Couple 2.
The crowd!
What crowd? We could all go home in one car.
Maybe you should lay down a
Nostalgia can be powerful, but when it arrives too late, it starts to feel like a studio apology. The Odd Couple 2 brought back Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, two legends whose chemistry had once defined a whole style of comedy. On paper, this should have been a warm victory lap. Two beloved actors, one classic pairing, and decades of audience affection. But 1998 was not waiting for this sequel. Comedy had changed. Audiences were moving toward sharper, faster, louder films, and this road trip reunion felt trapped between old charm and modern expectation. The original Odd Couple worked because its conflict was simple, intimate, and perfectly timed. Two mismatched men forced into the same space. The sequel stretched that dynamic outward, but the spark felt softer, the jokes felt older, and the timing felt out of step with the era. It was not a disaster because the actors lacked talent. It hurt because the talent deserved a better reason to return. Hollywood confused affection with demand, and the result felt less like a comeback and more like a farewell that arrived after the audience had already left. Jack Frost.
Everything okay back there, Harv?
A grieving child, a dead father, and a magical snowman should have created tears. Instead, it created confusion. Jack Frost may be one of the strangest family film gambles of 1998 because its heart was clearly in the right place, but its execution walked into a tonal snowstorm. Michael Keaton played a father who dies and returns as a snowman, a concept that wanted to be emotional, funny, healing, and whimsical all at once. But that mixture was risky from the beginning. For some viewers, the idea felt sweet. For others, the snowman design looked oddly unsettling, and the emotional foundation felt too heavy for the comedy surrounding it. The film asked families to laugh at slapstick moments while also processing grief, absence, regret, and a second chance that could never truly last. That is a hard balance, and Jack Frost never fully controlled it. Instead of becoming a holiday classic, it became a curiosity people remembered for the wrong reasons. Its catastrophe was not pure failure, it was misjudged sentiment. Hollywood built a family fantasy around heartbreak, then buried its strongest emotions under a snowman nobody could quite trust. I still know what you did last summer. The hook was back, but the fear was already fading. I still know what you did. Last summer arrived in 1998, trying to ride the late 90s slasher wave that Scream had helped revive. The first film had a simple, guilty pleasure setup. A group of young people, a terrible secret, and a killer who refused to let the past stay buried. But the sequel exposed the problem with that formula. Once the secret is known, what is left to uncover? This follow-up pushed the characters into a tropical setting, added more bodies, more screams, and more stormy atmosphere, but the suspense felt thinner. Instead of tightening the mythology, it stretched it. Instead of deepening the fear, it repeated the chase. Jennifer Love Hewitt and Brandy gave the film star appeal, but even recognizable faces could not hide the sense that the franchise was moving because the market demanded it, not because the story needed it. The mistake was classic Hollywood timing. Strike while the genre is hot, even if the script is not. It made money, but creatively, it weakened the brand and showed how quickly a horror hit could turn into a formula. Mighty Joe Young. Disney built a giant with heart, but audiences did not treat it like an event. Mighty Joe Young in 1998 had all the ingredients of a major family spectacle: a beloved creature, emotional adventure, impressive effects, and the kind of old-fashioned sincerity that studios hoped could pull parents and children into theaters together. The problem was that the movie arrived in a marketplace already crowded with louder, flashier, more aggressively marketed blockbusters. Its story of a massive gorilla protected from exploitation had emotional weight, but it also felt like a throwback at a time when audiences were chasing newer thrills. The effects were ambitious, the production looked expensive, brought warmth to the human side of the story, yet the film struggled to become more than respectable. It was not mocked like some disasters, but financially, it did not become the major hit its scale suggested. That made it a quieter kind of catastrophe. The kind where nobody laughs, but the numbers still hurt. Mighty Joe Young proved that sincerity alone could not guarantee blockbuster status. Hollywood gave audiences a gentle giant, but the box office wanted something louder. Soldier. This was supposed to be hard-edged sci-fi action. Instead, it became a cold monument to wasted potential. Soldier entered 1998 with Kurt Russell as a genetically trained warrior, a futuristic world, and the promise of brutal survival drama. On paper, it sounded like the kind of muscular science fiction film that could attract action fans and genre loyalists. But the finished movie felt strangely hollow. Russell committed fully to the role, using silence, physical presence, and controlled emotion to portray a man raised as a weapon. The problem was that the world around him never became as gripping as the idea. The film had expensive sets, bleak landscapes, and violent conflict, but it lacked the emotional spark needed to make audiences care beyond the surface. It felt like a movie built from cool ingredients without enough fire underneath. Worse, it arrived when sci-fi action was already fighting for attention in a crowded marketplace, and Soldier simply did not look fresh enough to dominate. Its failure was painful because the concept had real potential. Hollywood created a warrior designed to survive anything, except weak buzz, poor momentum, and audience indifference. Meet Joe Black. A movie about death walking among the living should have felt haunting, but Hollywood turned it into a 3-hour gamble. Meet Joe Black had everything that looked expensive on paper. Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, romantic mystery, elegant mansions, emotional speeches, and a supernatural idea big enough to feel timeless. But the problem was scale. The story moved slowly, almost deliberately testing audience patience, while its massive budget demanded the kind of turnout usually reserved for faster, flashier blockbusters. Brad Pitt's quiet, strange performance as death in human form became fascinating to some viewers and frustrating to others. Anthony Hopkins gave the film dignity, but dignity alone could not protect it from criticism about pacing and length. Instead of becoming a sweeping romantic classic, it became a symbol of Hollywood prestige excess: beautiful, polished, ambitious, and financially risky. The catastrophe was not that it lacked talent. It had plenty. The mistake was believing atmosphere could carry an enormous commercial burden by itself. Lost in Space.
Корабли мятежников? Опять их мутанты-камикадзе.
The mission was simple: launch a new sci-fi franchise. The crash happened faster than anyone expected. Lost in Space arrived with heavy marketing, recognizable source material, and the confidence of a studio hoping to turn an old television property into a modern, effects-driven blockbuster. For a moment, it seemed to work. The film opened strongly and looked like it might become a major late 90s franchise starter. But then, the weakness underneath began to show. Critics attacked the messy storytelling, uneven tone, and characters who never became as memorable as the visuals around them. The movie had spaceships, alien danger, family conflict, and big digital spectacle. Yet it often felt more assembled than inspired. Instead of building wonder, it built noise. That damaged its long-term future. Audiences showed up at first, but enthusiasm cooled quickly, and the franchise dream faded. Hollywood learned the hard way that nostalgia plus effects does not automatically create a universe worth revisiting. Holy man.
Okay, hey, leave some here and we'll get, what's his name, the dog from Frasier, Eddie, to sell someone a show tonight. Great, call me up. Thank you.
Was supposed to sell the miracle, but even his star power could not sell the movie. Holy Man tried to blend spiritual satire, television shopping culture, comedy, and feel-good wisdom into one mainstream package. That mixture sounded clever in theory, especially in a decade fascinated by media manipulation and celebrity gurus. But the finished film could never decide what it wanted to be. Was it a sharp attack on consumer culture? A sweet inspirational story? A workplace comedy? A strange Eddie Murphy experiment? The audience never received a clear answer. Murphy had charisma, but the script softened the comic edge that made him electric. Jeff Goldblum and Kelly Preston added support, yet the movie drifted instead of exploding. Worse, it arrived at a time when audiences expected sharper laughs from Murphy, not a mild spiritual message wrapped inside a retail satire. The result was a financial and creative stumble that felt painfully confused. Hollywood had a major star, but no solid reason for viewers to believe. Sphere. This should have been underwater paranoia with A-list power. Instead, it sank under its own mystery. Sphere had one of the strongest setups of any failure from 1998. Trapped beneath the ocean, investigating an alien object tied to impossible psychological terror. That sounds like a hit waiting to happen. Add Michael Crichton's name behind the source material, and expectations should have been even higher. But the film struggled to transform its ideas into gripping suspense. The deeper the story went, the more confusing it became, and the tension slowly turned into frustration. Instead of feeling trapped with brilliant minds losing control, audiences often felt trapped inside a plot that refused to sharpen. The cast worked hard, but star power could not rescue a film that felt emotionally distant and narratively tangled. Its failure hurt because the ingredients were so strong. Sphere proved that mystery is only powerful when the audience still wants the answer. The Newton Boys.
Ese chico es muy hábil. Claro que sí. Yo le enseñé todo.
Some flops explode loudly. This one simply vanished. And that may be even worse. The Newton Boys had respected talent, a fascinating true crime foundation, and the kind of old-fashioned outlaw energy that should have made it stand out. Directed by Richard Linklater and starring Matthew McConaughey, Ethan Hawke, Skeet Ulrich, and Vincent D'Onofrio, the film followed a real gang of bank robbers who became famous for planning heists with surprising discipline instead of wild chaos. On paper, that sounded fresh. But the movie arrived without the heat needed to become a major event. It was too polished to feel dangerous, too relaxed to feel urgent, and too quiet to compete with louder 90s studio releases. Audiences did not reject it with outrage. They mostly ignored it. That kind of failure can be brutal, because there is no scandal to keep the title alive, just empty seats and fading memory. The mistake was believing a charming period crime story could sell itself without a sharper hook. Psycho.
You forget about them as soon as they stop hurting. You got aspirins?
Some classics are dangerous to touch, and this one proved it the hard way. When Gus Van Sant remade Psycho in 1998, Hollywood did not simply revisit Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece. It stepped into one of cinema's most protected shadows. The idea was almost shocking by design. Remake the film nearly shot for shot, in color, with modern actors, and see what happens when a sacred classic is copied instead of reimagined. On paper, it sounded like an art experiment. In theaters, it felt baffling to many viewers. Vince Vaughn, Anne Heche, Julianne Moore, and Viggo Mortensen brought recognizable talent, but the film was trapped inside Hitchcock's blueprint without Hitchcock's atmosphere, precision, or timing. The original Psycho worked because it felt dangerous, sneaky, and psychologically sharp. The remake often felt like proof that copying the image does not copy the fear. Its failure became a lesson Hollywood should never forget. Some movies are not just stories, they are cinematic lightning strikes. Try to recreate them too literally, and all you expose is the emptiness between imitation and genius. Beloved. This was not a careless flop. It was a painful collision between prestige ambition and box office reality. Beloved in 1998 carried enormous artistic weight before audiences even saw a frame. Based on Toni Morrison's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel and driven by Oprah Winfrey's deep personal commitment, the film was never meant to be easy entertainment. It was heavy, literary, emotional, and haunted by the lasting trauma of slavery. That made it powerful, but also extremely difficult to sell as a mainstream theatrical event. The production was expensive, the runtime was demanding, and the marketing challenge was enormous. How do you convince mass audiences to spend a night with a story this painful, symbolic, and emotionally exhausting? Oprah delivered a committed performance, and the film had ambition that many safer studio pictures lacked. But ambition could not protect it from weak ticket sales. Its failure was especially tragic because the mistake was not lack of seriousness. It was misreading the audience, the moment, and the marketplace. Beloved proved that even noble projects can become financial disasters when Hollywood expects prestige alone to carry a massive budget. The Avengers. Before Marvel owned the word, Hollywood gave audiences an Avengers movie they wanted to forget. The Avengers of 1998 was supposed to transform a stylish British spy television series into a sleek big-screen adventure. Gave it serious name value, and the concept promised eccentric villains, elegant espionage, and strange comic book charm. But the finished film became infamous for all the wrong reasons. Reports of heavy recutting created the sense of a movie damaged before it even reached viewers, and critics quickly attacked its confusing story, stiff energy, and artificial style. Instead of feeling witty and sophisticated, it felt strangely lifeless. Instead of turning old-school British cool into a new franchise, it became a warning sign for every studio chasing recognizable intellectual property without understanding its tone. Sean Connery's villain should have been deliciously theatrical, but the film around him felt too broken to enjoy properly. The catastrophe was not just financial, it was reputational. The Avengers showed that style without rhythm, stars without chemistry, and nostalgia without purpose can collapse faster than any spy mission. Godzilla. Hollywood had the monster, the money, and the marketing, then, somehow, lost the soul. Godzilla in 1998 was not supposed to be just another summer movie. It was designed as a massive event, a full American reinvention of one of cinema's most iconic creatures. The campaign was everywhere, the hype was enormous, and expectations were built like skyscrapers. But when audiences finally saw the film, many fans felt something essential had been replaced. The creature looked different, behaved differently, and often felt less like Godzilla and more like a giant disaster movie animal running through New York. The film had scale, rain-soaked streets, military chaos, and destruction. But it struggled to deliver the mythic power people associated with the name. Critics were harsh, longtime fans were disappointed, and the planned franchise momentum weakened almost immediately. The movie still drew attention because the brand was huge, but attention is not the same as satisfaction. Its mistake was bigger than one creature design or one script choice. Hollywood assumed it could buy an icon, reshape it, and own the result. Instead, Godzilla became the loudest reminder of 1998. Spectacle means nothing if the audience feels betrayed. Hollywood's mistakes in 1998 were not just bad movies, they were expensive warnings. They proved that stars, budgets, nostalgia, and famous titles mean nothing when the story feels hollow. Some flops disappear, others become legends for the wrong reasons. Which disaster shocked you most? Comment below, like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten Hollywood disasters.